Without further ado, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here today at PSHSA's Return to the Workplace virtual conference. My name is Marla Wolf, and I'm a Product Service Specialist at PSHSA, and I'm very pleased to welcome you to the session, Building a Distance Learning Channel of Delivery with Shannon Hunt. Before we start, I want to mention a few housekeeping things. There will be an opportunity to answer a few questions following the session. We'll have a Q&A session 5 minutes at the end. So feel free to put your questions in the chat and we will make sure Shannon gets the questions at the end, or wait till the Q&A session to enter them into the text. I'd like to introduce Shannon Hunt. She's our featured speaker, and she works with PSHSA as Director of Digital Creations, Product and Programs. She has significant expertise in multi-channel content delivery, product development, and training delivery across both the private and public sectors. Coupled with significant experience in organizational development, business process, and design, she specializes in the application of systems thinking and its application to all aspects of program management and product management. In her current role, she is actively leading the digital learning product development operations and client experience teams at PSHSA. And she's focused on the customer experience, service delivery, and digital products and services. Shannon has an MBA from the Rotman School of Management, University of Toronto, and proudly serves as a member of the Board of Directors of the Cedar Center in York Region. Her session today will provide an overview of considerations and opportunities that go into building a distance learning channel to facilitate instruction, training programs, or opportunities for engagement. Welcome, Shannon.
All right, thank you and welcome. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. It's been a fantastic day, so I'm looking forward to providing this next session for you. As Marla mentioned, I'll take questions and answers at the end, and she'll let me know if there's anything in the chat that we should stop and take a closer look at. So in today's session, we're going to take a look at what are the considerations and opportunities when you're looking at making an investment or looking at the level of investment in creating a distance learning channel of delivery. We'll also take a look at a framework that can provide some guidance for you as you're looking at how a distance learning channel goes live and is fully operational and how those two things come together. So we'll spend some time looking at that. I'll also share PSHSA's experience with you in launching our distance learning channel as part of our response to the COVID-19. And we did so quickly, and we have one up and running, and we continue to build and iterate on that. So I will share that with you as well. So just as we get started, let's take a moment just to be sure that we're all have the same definition and understanding of what we mean by when we say distance learning for the purposes of this session. There are lots of terms that are used: online learning, e-learning, distance learning. What we're really speaking about today is virtual instructor-led training. So this is live instructor, live participants, and it's synchronous. So it's what it is not is e-learning. It's not self-paced e-learning. It's not video-based. It's not a blended solution. So it's worth just defining that, because there's noticed, particularly with my two kids moving online with school, they've used every term under the sun to describe the same thing. So it's important that we just to have a good understanding. The third point on the screen here is one that I just wanted to draw your attention to, and it's this idea of the translation of learning. And when we're talking about changing a channel of delivery, if we're maybe moving something from in-class to distance learning, it doesn't mean that you have to create an entirely new course. You could very much have the same course, the same content, with the same learning objectives. But the translation of learning about is really realizing that although the channel may be different, the goal is still the same: achieving the learning outcomes that are there, being sure that those are aligned to the activities, the interactions, what's being done with the learners, how they're being evaluated, and then from there, how it's applied even back on the job. So with all kind of sound instructional design, the same applies here. And it's just a point to consider, as you're looking, some of you may be actively looking to move from in-class to distance learning. It's not necessarily one is better than the other. They are just different, and the learning is really translated through the use of technology, engagement, and facilitation techniques that apply best in the distance learning format. So it's just an idea to get us to start to thinking about this idea of how things are, done differently, but the one is not necessarily better or worse than the other. Okay, so I thought I would start here. So making a decision about investing in distance learning as part of your market approach or a business decision is one thing. Making a decision to invest in a distance learning channel of delivery as part of a response to COVID-19 is quite another. And so I created a continuum to get us to, to help us think about why we're creating a distance learning channel of delivery. Why are you looking at creating that? Why are you looking to create this or launch this? Are you looking to respond? Simply there's a business need or a client need and something needs to move online. It could be short term. Are you looking to adapt? Are you looking to take something online and have it in place for the short to medium term? For example, until in-person training can resume, for example. Or are you looking to integrate? Are you looking to actually create a full new line of business that will then run in parallel to other delivery options you may have, e-learning or in-class? And it really is a continuum, because you could start at respond and move all the way through to integrate. You could start at integrate and move through adapt and back again. So it is a continuum, but it is something to consider about where you are and why you're looking at this, because the considerations and opportunities at each of these are a little bit different. So we'll start to look at those in some detail. Before we get into the specifics, I wanted to share this framework with you, because regardless of where you are in the continuum, at some point this is going to go live. So what this framework is designed to do is give you a sense of how do we go about going live and making this fully operational. So starting at the top, identify where you are, right? So are you responding, adapting, integrating? And then there's launch. Regardless, there is an effort in getting this up and running and live. And then from there, depending on whether you're adapting, responding, or integrating, you may iterate on that initial go live presentation, on the course, on the processes you have in place, or you may be actively trying to fully build that out. So I'll show you how these two things come together over the next few slides. Okay, so when you're looking to respond, you're looking to put something online to meet a need. The focus here is really on launch, right? So you can see that along the right-hand side. Considerations include what's the platform, what's the best way to do this, and that will depend. There are many of them. It might be something that you have. If you're looking to, what do you have? What's the level of investment I need if I'm going to source something new? And what are the features and requirements of those? You might be working with content as is or close to as is. And this goes back to the translation of learning ideas. That is absolutely possible to do that. And in our experience, we have done that and done some of that for sure. And it's absolutely possible to do that. The third, a large piece of this is logistics, distribution, logistics, material, forms, administrative processes, sign-in sheets. All these things that were being done in a classroom now have to find a way to be done at a distance or through a digital medium. And often when in this piece, you may find it makes sense to combine this with existing processes. So for example, you may continue to mail hard copies of content, for example. It's a short-term piece to meet a specific need, so you may combine the digital with the hard copy. So there's opportunities and things to think about as you respond. Okay, so and then moving through to kind of adaptation, and this is in many ways where PSHSA is today in our launch and creation of a distance learning channel focused on ongoing delivery. We are iterating and learning from what we've done so far. And we are approximately 5 weeks into distance learning being launched. Further than, in addition, we're starting to look at our content. Are there things that we want to be leveraging and taking advantage of in our exercises and activities to really be sure that we're leveraging the technology? So a good example of that is in a classroom. You could have, often you'll have a group discussion and people will provide ideas for a whiteboard, and you may get a handful of people that respond and many others won't. In the distance learning, you can absolutely leverage chat. You can leverage a poll and actually very quickly generate much more interest and more responses from more people in the same time frame. But also because it's a little more anonymous, people are often more willing to engage there. So that's an example that we're starting to look at. We're looking at evaluation. And without question, there's an element of creativity to this. So for those who have worked in product and in design, there is an element of creativity within the product. But what I'm really referring to here is really thinking creatively about how do you take different systems who have might have even completely different purposes, and how can you bring them together to create an experience or create a process or to get something done that needs to be done. So we're using our LMS, for example, in a completely new way and in a creative way to meet a core set of requirements, and it saves us some work in the administration as well. And then from there, there's integration. So this is where you're looking at, distance learning will now become a full line of business. It will run in parallel within class. It will run in parallel with e-learning, and you could have the same course running in all 3 channels. So this is when you're looking at, okay, what level of automation do we need? From the registration through to materials, within the program, and post-session. What systems do we need to integrate? And this is likely going to be more of an investment and a longer term look at how those things come together. The last piece is I want to spend, this intersection of instructional design and technology. I just want to spend a minute talking about that a little bit. And it's an interesting concept in that when you have instructional design and you have objectives you need to meet, what technology, what systems, what online tools can we use and put together, right, to really meet those outcomes? It sounds high level, but there's so many. I think on a daily basis, I'm coming across, since we've started looking at this, 3 to 4 different platforms that are actually specifically meant for online training delivery that offer a series of things and tools and ways to annotate and ways for everyone to contribute to a screen or add reaction. So there's a number of things that can be done there, and many of them can also handle right through the learning management piece. So it is an interesting area to really think about how these 2 things come together. For those that when we're working on e-learning as its own channel, we will often, consider this as well as how do these come together and what's the best way to get the message across. So it also applies here. Okay. So some of you that are in Ontario may be looking at, yes, distance learning for training in general, but also how to do this for CPO-approved training programs like the certification programs. And when you're looking at standard-based programs or even leadership programs, they need to be reliable. There needs to be an element of them being repeatable and then scalable. So reliable meaning, consistent delivery across sessions, potentially across instructors. We have more than 30 instructors at PSHSA that will deliver our certification programs. It needs to be somewhat stable and reliable across delivery. It needs to be repeatable. So it needs to be repeatable. It also needs to be scalable. So how do you go from 1, this is roughly our experience, 1 to 5 to 20 to 200 sessions in a distance learning channel? There are the elements that allow you to do this, I would suggest, are typically outside of the pure instructional design in the course itself. This is where you need to be looking at governance and systems and processes that allow for this. So the approach we've taken, and I'll get into this a little bit further, is kind of one system, right? So when we're using an FTP site to assist us with digital participant material distribution. So we're not emailing individual files or sending individual files each and every time, pulling them out of a drive or pulling them from somewhere. They sit in one place, accessible through at one point of entry, and that's the same every time, for example. So that's the more systems view that allows for this type of growth and stability. If I'll just pause there to say, if there are questions specific to the CPO approved programs, I'm happy to take those in the Q&A section or after the session as well in the PSHSA booth. Okay, so I'll share with you a little bit about what we've done. We launched very quickly. So it was definitely, we were in the response phase, and we went live quickly. We went live with a non-certification programs first, and then added that in. And so as we started with a systems approach, we continue to build that approach. We made the decision that it would be fully digital. So every piece of it is digital at this point. And we're continuing to learn from that and get feedback on that and evaluate it. But that was what we decided in the beginning. And every form, every element, everything is completely digital. We used existing systems only. So how do we put them together? We've used just about every system we have in order to create that, pure digital delivery. So it was a combination of learning management system, in-house IT infrastructure, server, web-based hosting, platforms that we're paying, that we're using through Zoom. So it was really a combination of all of these things and how do they come together. That being said, the majority, not the majority of the work, a significant work was done around business rules and process. How are we, these are the underpinning of how this has gone live and what allows it to continue to run. So it is something to think about when you're thinking about, okay, if we have to send participant information out to a group of participants ahead of a session, at what point do we need to be sure that everyone has registered and is in so that nobody is missed, particularly if you're looking at automation? And how do those things come together, and what does, and so it's this is really an underpinning piece. And as I've mentioned before, we've been very creative. It really took some brainstorming and lots of really, really smart people thinking out of the box on how we were going to do this. So I think, looking back to a degree, when we work with our clients on e-learning, design and build work, instructional design, build work, digital product creation, we have a model that's based in flexibility. And what we've really done here is we've really applied our own model. Specifically, starting kind of at the top, working down in the image on the slide, we have a significant amount of content within the organization. We can customize that content. We can create new product. We can combine that in unique and different ways to really meet a client's need. And really what we've done is we've done this for ourselves. And then from there, we apply the expertise we have from instructional design, e-learning capability, preparing our instructors to use the technology, preparing our instructors on how to facilitate online. All of those skills that we use, with our clients, we use them in-house to really get this up and running. Learning management, so looking at testing, certificates, record management, and the full leverage of the learning management system to do that, as well as hosting capability, which we're taking advantage of as well. So it's I think in many ways when we work with our clients and, we're able to work with them on, providing as much or as little assistance as needed across, content, how much, development, learning management, and hosting. So we're very good at moving through this continuum and identifying where we need to go and what we need to draw on to make it happen. And that's what we've really applied here. So it's been an interesting it's absolutely been an interesting journey. So just to be a little more specific, it's strong product. So if you're when you're working from a strong product, it allows you to run with it. The instructional design is sound. It will hold in a distance learning channel of delivery. Learning is translated. And it really has an opportunity. There's a learner experience there, and that's an in-session learner experience. So strong facilitation. So we took the time. There's more to do here, but we took the time to prepare our facilitators to instruct online, and then prepare them to use the technology, which can be which are different things. They're connected, but they're different. So at 2:00, my colleague did a session about how to facilitate online, and it's all about engagement technique. It's all about how to shine. It's all about how to, reach through and connect with people, in addition to just being comfortable with how the technology works. And then the usability of systems and processes. What is that experience like? And then the strategic use of technology. So we've fully leveraged a learning management system. We're using it in a way we've never used it before in order to handle some of the testing, certificate feedback, passing mark consideration. So we're using it in a new way. And the combination of interaction tools around this idea of a learning experience, I think, has been, you want to do that strategically. So it's not throw all the technology at it. It's use what works best to meet your outcomes, to meet the learning objectives, to create the learner experience you're really and purposefully going after. And it also allows the integration of evaluation. So that could be the evaluation of the learner, the course, the session, etc. And lastly, the piece here is important, and that's around this idea of client experience. So the learner experience may be in session. The client's experience start from the point where they engage with the organization to register, find their way in, get their materials, get to their session. So that is, absolutely a consideration for us, and would encourage you to think about it from that perspective, as well as you would with an in-class process or e-learning or otherwise. The same would apply here. So just one last slide, and I think we're pretty good with time, so we'll spend some time in questions and answers. Just when you're looking at kind of where do I begin, where do I start, I would encourage you to think about why. Where you are in that continuum, and then looking at the instructional design, looking at technology, how they intersect, what are the systems and governance around this, and then this idea of creativity, flexibility, learning as you go. The tagline that we used within PSHSA for a few weeks as we got this ready and up and running and through the first few sessions was, there's no expectation of perfection. We need to be comfortable with that. We're going to learn and do this together. So I would encourage you to, think about it in the same way and have some fun with it as well. So I'll pause there and see if there's questions, Marla, or follow-up points, and then I can go through those.
I am not, are there any questions for Shannon or any information or details that you need? I'm not seeing any at the moment, but Christine, yeah, covered all the points. If anyone's got any additional questions.
I know as one of the instructors.
Great looking slides. I love that.
The experience has been good.
This will be recorded as well for future use to download as well. But no questions at the moment.
So do you want me to spend a few minutes talking about the, maybe just ask the group, are anyone interested in the, how you do this from the standards perspective? So actually, being approved to do this, the certification programs for distance learning or that experience. So I can spend a few minutes just talking through that as well. That may be helpful for if anyone is looking at what that looks like. And in essence, that component of this has been is allowed us to take a bit of a a litmus test on how we were going to do this. Have we really thought through all the contingency planning, and from a technology perspective, the contingency planning from a facilitator perspective, the what if, and that's actually in many ways what they were looking for as well, is what supports are in place if somebody is to just can't get connected. Who do they call? So it was an interesting process to go through and work through and get that up and running and live. So from an experience perspective, it was it's a worthwhile exercise to think through the what ifs and what action you'd want a learner to take if they just simply can't get connected back into the session. How else should they contact you? Who and what role your IT support will play in this, if any, and what that looks like. So I'll say internally we've needed some support in some areas of what we've done and less in others, not necessarily what we've expected, but it's been it's something to certainly think through. I would encourage you to do that and learn from it as well.
That is excellent. There is actually a question. There's two questions. One is about evaluation, and the attendee was wondering if this was mentioned, and if so, is there a tool to evaluate platforms? So. Yeah,
absolutely. So there are tools that can be used. And I can maybe after I'll put the link up in the chat so that it's recorded. So there are mechanisms to do that. The model that we've used a little bit is around really as you're evaluating, defining what your requirements are, to actually think through, these are the things I want to have and must have, and then aligning that to a platform or the technology you're using. I would say one of the most, if it's interesting, is I'd say one of the biggest differentiators I've seen across the platforms is their ability to handle the evaluation, testing, and certificate piece in the end. Most of them will handle the interaction, engagement pieces in a way that we're experiencing now. There's some consistency there, but it's that's where I've found the differentiation is their ability and how robustly they can handle the evaluation, testing, record management components, as well as some of the registration pieces.
Wow. And along those lines, another question was if there's an LMS that you would recommend.
So I would say, so the learning, so many of them function in fundamentally the same way. So there is we could go down the whole path of an LMS and a experience platform and all of those, but from an LMS that provides testing, evaluation, certificate management, they're all fundamentally, they will all have that. So we use we use the Litmus by SAP LMS. So it does everything we need it to do and more. I'm really successful with that. Larger academic learning management systems can be much larger than that. So it does depend on the need to a degree. But there's a website, and I can put the link on, and it exists solely to compare and review learning management systems. So I'll put the name of the author who runs that site. I've been there many times. If anyone is familiar with the work of Craig Weiss, it's interesting to see. So he continuously reviews and posts information about different learning management systems. So I can certainly provide that for you. Take a look at. The LMS is powerful. It actually helps us meet a series of requirements around testings in the CERT programs that I'm not sure we would be able to, how we would do it otherwise, because it provides, not only does it provide the test, it can provide instant feedback, it can provide access to a certificate, but only if a test has been passed. It can do random tests, it can draw random test questions. So it's a powerful tool if it's something you're looking at, for sure.
Thanks. Excellent. Any further questions? Any more comments, feedback? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Shannon, I guess I'm going to close the Q&A session, but if you don't mind, the next slide, just 2 slides over, just to, firstly, I want to say thanks, because your insights are amazing, and it's great to get this exposure and this information in this session. So your insights on distance learning and the emerging market due to the pandemic has been really great that you've shared this with us. There is another question that's come in. I had a feeling that was going to happen. It might be a delay, but someone asked, and I can't pronounce your name, Shiromi, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, asked us, can we use this as a way to do staff training? And I'm believing they're speaking about distance learning.
Yeah, absolutely. So from my perspective, I would say yes, there's no reason why you couldn't. It just takes the thinking through the, how to, all the elements you need to have in your staff training, and how can you do that through distance learning. But absolutely, I don't see why not. We've had some success in putting even custom courses that we've been doing for clients, and the delivery of those that can no longer be done in person. We've been really successful at doing that, and that would be all being done internally with their staff, so with their managers or with our facilitators or both. So we've had some success there. So from my perspective, absolutely.
That's excellent. So any further questions? This is great. If there's any more questions, now's your chance, because once again, Shannon, thank you for delivering this and sharing all this information with everyone. I want to thank everyone for attending this session.